So this week, we will be talking about salt. We are doing a sermon series on the Sermon on the Mount, found in Matthew 5. Last week, Troy went through an introductory to that. He went through the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek. And now we are moving on to salt, and what Jesus says about us, and what he says about salt. So our root verse, our core passage is Matthew 5:13. If you have a Bible, you can follow along. My version is ESV, and our verse says, Jesus talking to his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet." Those were Jesus' words about us and about salt. So the first part, I want to take the first part of what Jesus said there. You are the salt of the earth. So when breaking this down, I want to look at what is salt, right? We kind of have an idea of what salt is, but I really want us to understand and have the mind of what salt is. So salt is a mineral substance. It's comprised of sodium chloride. That's its chemical composition. It's formed when unstable metal sodium reacts with chlorine gas, and it's the only family of rocks regularly eaten by humans, right? We eat salt. It's a rock, but it's edible. We eat it. It occurs naturally in many parts of the world. The oceans are about 3.5% salt. There's natural salt deposits found underground. There's the salt flats in Utah, which are really neat. And there's other salt flats around the world. And we even get salt from outer space. It comes down in meteors, which is pretty neat. And when doing some research, the staff and I found this place called Hierapolis, which is actually mentioned in the Bible. It's a really neat salt deposit found in Turkey. And I've got some pictures up here of that. And yes, that is water that has been formed around pools of salt. You can go to the next picture. So students, this is where you lean over and elbow your parents and whisper, "Family vacation." Right? The water temperature there is actually 95 degrees. It is a constant 95 degrees, and it's all natural salt springs, which is just incredible that God would create something like that. That it's the perfect temperature, it's the perfect place to have cleansing salt pools, and it's a huge European vacation spot. So aside from that, salt is also essential for human life to exist, right? There's salt in our bodies. Every cell in the human body contains some amount of salt, and throughout the entire body, there's about 250 grams of salt in our bodies. Salt also has many uses, both in Jesus' time and today. So back in Jesus' time, it was used as currency. It was very valuable, almost as valuable as gold. A lot of times, Roman soldiers were paid with salt. They were paid to protect the salt trade routes, so they were essentially paid with what they protected. So if they didn't protect the salt roads, they didn't get paid. So they really had a lot of job security if they did their job. It was used as currency in Ethiopia. Northern Africa is very salt-rich, and up until the 20th century, it was actually the country's main type of currency was a block of salt. It was traded as it would be dollar bills or coins. And the English word salary, right, which you get paid at your job, comes from the Latin word for salt, which is very interesting. It goes to show that salt was very valuable back in Jesus' time and still is today. Salt is a purifier. It cleanses and it kills bacteria. It's also used in water softeners. I remember growing up, I lived on a farm, so in our basement we had a water softener, and it was part of my chores to fill the water softener when it got low. So I'd have to lift the 50-pound bags up on my shoulder and then try to dump it into this container that was taller than me, so the other part of my chore was to clean up the mess that I made when I dumped the bag on the floor. But that's another property of salt, is it purifies, it cleans things. It's a preserver for meats. It can draw out moisture in food, preventing bacteria, resisting decay, right? Who loves beef jerky? Yeah, I do. That's my number one stocking stuffer at Christmas, is my mom gets me tons of beef jerky because I like it so much. And salt can be thanked for that because of the properties that it has to draw moisture out of meat. It can be used as fertilizer. It can provide nutrients to plants. It's used in many fertilizers nowadays. One that we all recognize is that it gives flavor, right? Please pass the salt, things like that. My grandpa, when he was in grade school, he broke his nose playing softball, and he can no longer taste anything because of the way his nose broke or something. But he can't taste food, except saltiness. It's the only taste he has. So whenever my grandma cooks something, he takes the salt shaker and will pour it on his food so he can taste it. And I can still hear my grandma, Jim, you're going to kill yourself if you keep putting so much salt on your food. My grandpa, eat it, I just want to taste it. That's it. But salt, it really brings out the flavor in foods. It reduces the bitter taste. That's why a lot of people put salt on grapefruit. They put salt on other types of bitter fruit. It really brings out the flavor. And salt is also healthy for us, in moderation, of course. I know it's gotten a bad rap in food and nutrients today with the sodium content and everything, but sodium is good for us. It helps regulate the heartbeat. It helps keep bodily fluids balanced. It's essential for us to live as humans. So when Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth," right? We have to have the mind of the disciples. We have to picture how they would view salt, right? Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth." So the disciples would think, salt is very valuable. So what's Jesus saying about us? We are very valuable, right? Jesus is saying we are valuable and we are useful. He's saying that we are very valuable and we are very useful, as comparing us to salt. We are meant to purify, we are meant to preserve, we are meant to fertilize. We are meant to give flavors to those around us on earth, right? And in Jesus' day, there were actually a couple different kinds of salt. I know there's a huge variety nowadays, but in Jesus' day there was pure salt, which was the useful salt, the good salt, and then there was this kind of fake salt, and we'll call it fool's salt, like fool's gold, right? There's gold that's valuable, and then there's stuff that looks like gold, but it's not. It's fake. It's fool's gold. So pure salt will not lose its flavor, right? It's pure. It's good. When stored properly, salt has a shelf life that is indefinite, right? Nobody knows how long it'll last. It won't go bad because it's pure salt, and if it's stored properly, it'll last forever. And then there's the fool's salt. There's fake salt. Sometimes it gets mixed with other materials, other minerals when it's being formed in the earth. It can be diluted. It can lose some of its properties. They can be washed away by weathering, exposure, things like that. And that salt that is fake salt, it's useless, right? If it loses its saltiness, if it loses its usefulness, it's only good to be thrown out, right? So it might look like salt, but it doesn't taste like salt, and therefore it's not salt and it's not useful. So looking at the second part of our verse, Matthew 5:13, "But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet." Now there's a lot of translations out there that say, "But if salt has lost its taste," "But if salt has lost its flavor," "But if salt has lost its saltiness," there's different translations there, and looking at the root word, the Greek word there is moreino, The Greek word that was put in there is mereno, and it means to act foolishly. So, taking that and putting it back into the verse, but if salt acts foolishly, right, how shall its saltiness be restored? So Jesus is saying, if you, the salt of the earth, if you act foolishly, how shall you be restored? You are no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. So it really has nothing to do with the saltiness of salt, but he's saying foolishness. That's the translation there. So it's no wonder that foolish people make tasteless jokes, right? I'm glad you guys got that. So Jesus says that we are very valuable and useful, but we are not to be foolish, right? We are not to be like the fake salt that has no use. So going back to the two types of salt, in Jesus' day, they didn't have microscopes to look at the crystals of salt and to see if they were pure or not. The way they would tell back then is they would taste it. They would take it, put it in their mouth. If it tasted like salt and looked like salt, then it was salt. But if it looked like salt and didn't taste like salt, then it wasn't salt and they had no use for it. So that's how we can determine true followers, right? That's how God tests true followers. He tastes us. I know that sounds kind of weird, but he looks at us, he looks at our heart, and he sees if we are pure, like pure salt, or if we are fake, like fake salt, right? And Jesus says those that are fake, they are doomed to be trampled under people's feet. So my encouragement is to be the pure salt, right? Don't just look like a follower of God. Don't just look like someone who loves God. Really practice your beliefs. Be pure in your beliefs. Be pure in your following. Salt is also mentioned in Paul's letter to the Colossians. In Colossians 4, 5, and 6, he says, "Walk in wisdom towards outsiders, making the best use of your time. Let your speech always be gracious and seasoned with salt." Right? There's salt coming up again. "So that you may know how you ought to answer each person." So, something I waited to mention until now was that in Jesus' time, salt was also a symbol of wisdom, was a symbol of friendship, of trust. So when Paul says it here, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, right? He was symbolizing, let your words always be full of wisdom, let them be full of trust and friendship towards outsiders, right? Let your words carry value, let them be valuable. Right? Do not let your words be useless. Don't just go on babbling about something, or let your words not be encouraging to other people, not lifting them up, right? Have purpose when you talk with others. Communicate the gospel with wisdom. That's what he's saying here. And I've got some reminders for us. I'm going to pass out the offering baskets, but they're actually full of salt packets as a reminder. You can take one, hang on to it, keep it with you, put it in your pocket, keep it on your dresser, or put it in your wallet or something, just as a reminder to stay salty, to always be salty, to have your words seasoned with salt, as a reminder that you are useful. Things like that, just as a little something to hang on to. And you can eat it if you want, but the idea is that it's a reminder to stay pure, to stay salty in Jesus' words. The last verse that I want to leave you with is 1 John 3:3, which says, and everyone who thus hopes in him, in Jesus, purifies himself as he is pure. All right? Do not let this world dilute you, turn you into fake salt, make you lose your saltiness. Do not let the things of this world taint you. Right? Jesus has already made us pure when our hope is in him. When we believe in him, we are pure. Right? We cannot be corrupted by Satan's lies, by continual sin, by the evil of this world. So I encourage you to continue your walk with God, stay salty, putting your trust in God, He will make you salty, and He will keep you salty. He will keep you pure, right? Time with Him, spent in prayer, in worship, in practicing spiritual disciplines. This is how you remain salty. This is how you remain salty and keep your saltiness as you walk. Remember that you are valuable, you are useful. Like salt, Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth. You are valuable and useful. But do not be foolish. Do not waste your value. Do not waste your words. The prayer team will be off to the side. If you guys want to discuss this more, this idea of being salty, if you want to know how to stay salty, if you just want to talk about how God is working in your life, how you can live with value, how you can be useful, how you can just follow God more. Don't be afraid to talk to the prayer team. We are there for you guys. We are there to pray for you, to pray with you, and to just help guide you. Thank you for being here, and I just pray that we continue to be salty as we leave here today. Please bow your heads.